which begins today on the inner life. It is my idea to deal with the certain important aspects of the inner life and the methods and some of the methods and disciplines that are helpful in renewing the springs that are within us, and all of these will be a prologue to some other thinking that I'd like to do with the congregation concerning the difficulties and the problems that are involved for all of us who are concerned about the meaning of human dignity in the world, who are concerned about the kinds of attitudes that at one time were very familiar to us and were part of the presuppositions of our lives, and now, because of the blanket of fear that is sweeping all over America and the world, we are permitting what seems to me to be diabolical forces to establish squatters' rights over positions which belong to those who believe in the dignity of the mind and the spirit of man. But I feel that as a background for that, we need to think carefully about the inward part of us. These two things, one from an English poet and one from the Apostle Paul. Hemmed in by petty thoughts and petty things, intent on toys and trifles all my years, pleased by life's gauds, pained by its pricks and stings, swayed by ignoble hopes and ignoble fears, threading life's tangled maze without life's clue, busy with means, yet heedless of their ends, lost to all sense of what is real and true, blind to the goal to which all nature tends. Such is my surface self. But deep beneath, a mighty actor on a worldwide stage, crowned with all knowledge, Lord of life and death, sure of my aim, sure of my heritage, I, the true self, live on in self's despite, that life profound whose darkness is God's light. And then these rather searching words from the apostle. He says, it is all in your interest. He's talking about his faith and so forth. It is all in your interest, so that the more grace abounds, the more thanksgiving may rise and redound to the glory of God. And then he says, hence I never lose heart. Though my outward man decays, my inner man is renewed day after day. The slight trouble of the passing hour results in a solid glory past all comparison for those of us whose eyes are on the unseen, not on the seen. For the seen is transient, but the unseen is eternal. I'd like to think with you then about certain general aspects of the inner life. For purposes of reflection, I would like to begin by distinguishing, if I may, between those things that are apparently superficial in us, those areas of our lives that are obvious, the reaction area, the things that we do superficially, the words that we speak, from which we extract the meaning before we send them out and then send them on their way. There's a whole area in which we have agreed to be casual and unreal, even to be deceptive, but by agreement. For instance, if you're not feeling very well, and some casual person or some person who says in a casual manner, some uncasual person who speaks to you in a casual manner, I said, well, how are you? And you say, oh, I'm fine. And your head is just about to fall off, you say. You don't live your private life in public. You don't turn the inside out always. There's an agreement about that. I remember visiting with Lincoln Steffens many years ago, and his son Pete was very perturbed because his father was teaching him to be honest and to have direct reactions, and yet all the time his father expected him to say things that were the courteous things to say when he didn't feel that way. And I remember we were sitting talking, and the son came rushing in, and his father introduced me to him, and Pete said, how are you? And I said, fine. And then he rushed out, and at the door his father stopped him, and he said, Pete, is that on the level? Oh, yes, he's a nice guy. And he went on out, and then when he left, his father said, I asked him whether it was on the level because we had to have a good session about the agreements, the superficial agreements that men have about certain courtesies and so forth when they aren't, no one expects that they should be true. Well, I don't know. It would be an interesting thing to try it for about 2 hours. Just saying what it is, calling it by name without blinkers. I imagine it would be a great relief to a lot of things that are going on inside of us, but that's neither here nor there. Now, the mind, the thinking process is a part of this first layer, this first division of the inward parts. the whole reflective process of the mind, the problem-solving process of the mind. And that is why there are many men think that there can be no thinking on the part of the individual apart from some problem, some kind of difficulty, some felt difficulty that upsets this normal flow of what we call the pattern of adjustment, or just superficial adjustment. But in the operation of this first level, the thinking part of us, thoughts become very important as far as determining what our inner life is like. It is quite possible, it would seem to me, to feed the mind with the kind of thoughts, the kind of ideational content, the kind of concepts that will sweeten the life, that will give positive accent to the life, that will invade the pattern of living. Not so much in terms of a set of proposals about goodness or beauty or wholeness, but rather in terms of quality, of flavor, of tang, of overtone. Now, I would like to ask you a very simple question. During this past week, 7 days, what kind of thoughts have you put into this rather superficial reservoir of yours? It's just that part of your mind that's in active commerce with ideas. One of the ways by which you can get just a glimpse of your flavor is to watch yourself, to feel yourself when you are not aware of what you are about. I don't know how to say this. To watch yourself when you aren't looking, you know, and see how you look. What are you doing? I mean, that's when the rhythm, the flow of your mind, this still perhaps superficial dimension, but we'll call it that for the moment. But when the pattern is at work and you are not working it is working, and then you watch it. And all sorts of things are recognizable if you're discerning. You will recognize that by reading a certain kind of material for so long a time that the flavor of that is a part of the taste of you. Not your taste, but the taste of you. Very different. And in that sense, you see, I can, even though in a limited way, in that sense I can create the kind of flavor that I shall have. In that sense, I can create my own judgment, the own judgment that life will pass upon me. Now, that's almost a mechanical process, but not quite mechanical. So that a man can deliberately go about the business of feeding into his mind the materials which, when they fructify and blossom, will transform the quality of his being. That's possible. The world is full of witnesses of that stuff. Now there's a second area. It is a wider, deeper area. There are all sorts of words by which you recognize it, and I'm a little self-conscious to talk about it because everybody is an expert in psychology now, and it's, so I will call it this big, this vast continuum. They have a lot of words for it. It's the unconscious and the something else, the something else. But it is a vast continuum that has been opened up, and it has, in this opening process, we have become aware of great abysmal drives that are churning away, and now and then they throw up to the surface things that make havoc of the nicely arranged furniture, period furniture. And we have been so enamored by this, so deeply affected, and indeed it has wrought revolutions in the thinking and in the feeling tones, even in the therapy by which men have sought to administer unto other men. So I do not speak in any way that is disparaging, but we have become so overwhelmed by this that we feel that it represents not only the connecting link with the soul, or the rhythm, or the pulse, the respiration, that's the word, with the respiration of all the generations of human beings who've ever lived, and before them, those who stood in immediate candidacy to become human beings, a whole round movement of the upward push of life. It is a point at which we are involved in that process. So now and then, when the tide rises, it is because of the movement of moons that are far beyond the furthest rim of our memories or our thinking. And when those tides start moving, we can very easily say that we are the victims. There is no way by which we can push the tide back. And once we take that into the center of our awareness, then the movement of the tide is spearheaded by the formal discursive processes of the mind. And we hope to relate this level to that one in ways that are conscious, so that we may use this great continuum as a resource upon which we draw for the vitalities needful in working out a pattern of living by the use of the reflective processes of mind. And in a very interesting way, in some of our thinking, this continuum has taken the place of God. It is God. Now, I'd like to take one more step. It seems to me that there is still a deeper level in the human spirit, a level that that antedates the group soul, the folk spirit, and of course I'm prejudiced. I have a name for it. I think it is God. It is the level in the human spirit in which God moves without disguise. Socrates had the idea, in part. You remember how he, in his explanation of the soul, he talks about, he says that the souls lived in the presence of God before they were born and before they became involved in time and space. They were in the presence of God, waiting for their time, as men line up with their parachutes to jump out of a plane. And they live in the presence of God, so that they are naked and undisguised in the presence of this, what may be called this raw energy, with no filter, just capacity, boundaries. And then when the moment comes for life, says Socrates, these souls become involved in bodies and become a part of the time-space predicament. Then, he says, everything that is knowable, they have already. And that is why, for him, teaching is not teaching. It is learning is not learning. It's recollection. And you remember the dramatic instance in which he brought a slave into the academy, and by asking him a series of questions, he finally had the slave answer something, give an answer to something that was completely outside of the realm of the slave's experience in any of his generation. That the ground of the spirit of man is not like the eternal, but is the eternal. And therefore, he who sends his shaft down deep enough strikes that stream which becomes the living water, washing and purging and cleansing. And I think that is why when men talk to you now about ways by which number 1 section and number 2 section can be straightened up and people may become whole, they say to you, there is no substitute that can be shared with the distressed person in mind and soul. No substitute for love, for being cared for. Now that's what they're getting at. The Hindu poet expresses it in another way, but he's saying the same thing. And I laugh when you say that a fish in the water is thirsty. Do you seek the real, the true, the beautiful? Go where you will, from Benares to Mathura. If you have not found your own soul, if you have not found your own soul, the world is unreal to you. That's what he's talking about. Some years ago, and I'll stop now. Some years ago, a friend of mine gave me an old copy of the National Geographic magazine. It was a marked copy. It was a story of certain big trees that are growing in the Sahara Desert. And the scientist tells this story about those trees. He says that there was a time when the Sahara Desert was a great primeval forest, dank, full of luxurious growth. And then as there were shifts in the climate, the moisture began disintegrating, and finally, at long last, there was the desert waste. The vestigial reminders of that previous glory of the area is the oasis. It is the signature of the jungle left in the desert. But there are some other signatures, these great trees. He says that these trees go back through the ages, that they are their offspring, they are the offsprings of trees that sent their roots down more deeply into the earth as the demands and the pressures of the external environment increased, so that at long last they went through all of the subsidiary and secondary areas of moisture and of minerals and reached what he called deep underground rivers in which there abided concentrated minerals. And they began bathing their roots in these deep waters. So as they did. Strength and energy, power, ability to stand the torrid heat, the windstorms, everything. So independent of Oasis, here and there the traveler occasionally runs upon one of these trees with green leaves in the desert. Now, whatever it takes, my friends, to tunnel all the way down through all these layers until you hit this eternal residue in you must be done. For it is where nothing can abide that is not authentic. It is where there is no barrier. It is in you. And when the God in your spirit makes contact with the God of life, then there is established in that moment a current that can turn any darkness into light. Any darkness into light. Oh, how tragic it is if we turn our backs on so great a wholeness. How tragic it is.